Hello, I'm LineAD and you might know me from my video nearly a year ago which brought the best way to optimize the Rapier blade build into the public eye for the first time. Since then I've received so much positive feedback from you guys and have seen the build popping up here and there, but a lot of you guys have been asking for updates amidst all the PvP changes. So this is actually going to be my second update video on this build since its original creation. Now if it gets a bit confusing as to which Rapier bleed guide is the most relevant and up to date, you can actually just go down to the description and check the spreadsheet that I've recently made. I have all my builds on there, including this Rapier bleed guide, and the good thing about a spreadsheet is that I can go in and edit it as things change, so I don't need to constantly release videos and overwrite my previous videos. So that's there if you guys need. Thank you to the cousin for doing this on his video, because then I saw it and I took the idea because it's a really neat idea. Now before I get into it all, here is some advice. If you have tried this build and you go like 2 kills, 12 deaths in an outpost rush, or you can't seem to secure kills in arenas, I do not blame you at all, and it is not just you. The very nature of this build goes against what defines this current meta. What I mean by that is by the time you even try to build 2 stacks of bleed on a target, if your opponent hasn't already taken you out, their Zerg definitely has swarmed to you. I cannot tell you the amount of times I've gone for a healer, maybe applied 1 bleed stack, waited 3 or 4 seconds, and half the lobby's on me. It's actually crazy, the Zerg mentality. This burst meta does not take kindly to players who want to tactically set up bleed stacks ready for the execution, which makes perfectly logical sense. Who would let you just set up for a long amount of time? But there is an antidote for this. In my time away, I've looked to other YouTubers who have adopted this build, namely Solus and Kanix shown on screen, who I like to think might have sourced inspiration from my early guides on the Rapier bleed build. Both of these players seem to use the bleed build to a very effective extent, and I think it comes down to their accelerated style of combat. What I mean by that is they prioritize quicker engagement and constant pressure, rather than taking the approach of weaving in, setting a bleed, weaving out, setting up another bleed, and repeating until you get as close to 3 stacks as you can, or maybe 2 stacks. They quite often pop their Flourish and Finish at 1 stack and the damage is still really nasty and good, and you can follow it up with some evade spams or your secondary weapon. Using a weapon like the 5-staff as your offhand means that not all of the damage needs to come from your Rapier. You don't need to one-shot them. You can just chunk some of them out with your Flourish and Finish, and then follow it up with the 5-staff or vice versa. I'm not going to waste your time blabbing about every detail because I have done so in previous videos. See the top right or the description for that. TLDR, take omnidirectional evade on your Rapier with keenly empowered, slot a regular tier 5 opal into your Rapier, use a bloodletting ring, always have 250 intelligence, and remember that empower and rend take effect at the time of applying a bleed stack with Tondo, not when the Flourish and Finish is used. Whether you want to sit at 200 con, 150 con, or 100 con just depends on the risk and reward you're willing to take, but I do find 150 con to be the sweet spot. Now some updates on this build. Some of you guys in the comments told me that punishing Runeglass increases your bleed damage, and you guys were correct. All the results and testing is shown on screen. So the ideal setup would be 5 punishing Runeglass in your armor and a normal opal in your Rapier. Do not take a Runeglass opal in your Rapier or else you will lose damage on your bleed. An awesome viewer of mine, Armistice, in my Twitch chat also suggested that I use the controlled breathing passive, which grants 3 stamina on every hit, and what he showed me is that this applies to every tick of Tondo's bleed. Let's just say that you have 4 bleed stacks active. This means that for every tick of damage, you will receive 12 stamina. If you swap off your Rapier, this will not take effect, even if you switch back. Now here is just a sample skill tree which uses this controlled breathing tech, using evade. I want to dedicate a section purely to the ways that you can use evade. You might remember from my previous videos that I always dodge roll to proc my opal and then use an evade for a big empower before I apply a bleed stack to maximize my outgoing damage. In an ideal situation, this is all well and good. However, there are a few pitfalls to this playstyle. First of all, in the time that it takes to dodge roll and then evade before you pop your Tondo, your opponent will have seen you approaching them and probably just iframe your Tondo. Secondly, if you use your evade as a damage amplifier, you don't have it to dodge backwards into safety and you leave yourself a bit vulnerable. So then, what are the alternate ways to use evade then? Evade can be used as a really effective animation cancel after Tondo so that you aren't stuck in place for as long, and how to do it is shown on screen currently. Obviously, if you use evade as an animation cancel after your Tondo, you will not benefit from the empower that it provides, and your flourish and finish will not be as strong. This is why you need to evaluate the situation case by case. Usually, if a lot of pressure is being applied to you, the best course of action is to use evade as an animation cancel or to step backwards after you use your Tondo. However, if your target is unsuspecting of your approach, or maybe your target is fighting someone else, you can definitely afford to be a bit greedy and use a dodge roll followed by an evade to get the opal empower and the evade empower just before your Tondo and min-max your damage. Your secondary weapon choice comes down to what feels good in your hands, but overall the magic weapons will be the most viable and make the most sense since you are running that 250 intelligence. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will cover the 3 magic weapons very briefly. The Ice Gauntlet provides a great mix of crowd control and survivability. It is pretty reliable and consistent, and it is my main at the moment. The Fire Staff is something that I am yet to properly try, but it is very aggressive and very offensive, and it might be one of the better options. If I try it, I might report back to you guys and see how it goes. The Void Gauntlet is really great for providing empower on tether now that it persists on weapon swap, and you have a root on Scream and some cooldown reduction if you take Orb, or another empower if you want to take Oblivion. However, your mobility and survivability is limited when you're using the Void Gauntlet. Thank you for watching another build guide. I hope you all enjoyed this one. Don't forget to leave a like and a sub and comment, as well as head over to my Twitch channel over at twitch.tv/linead with a double D. All my socials are in the description, but please, I implore you to go to my Twitch because I really want to get that a bit more active. I'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.